Alright, so this is my first video recording I'd be doing of World of Tanks, and I'm building this mainly for the clan, just so I don't have to go and individually talk with every single one of you. And I know that a lot of you really like playing your heavy tanks, and I can understand that. You like the heavy tanks, they're big, they have nice guns, they're not very fast, but they're good tanks. And a lot of people want to know which heavy tanks are the best. Well, that's mainly your opinion. To point out some main basic facts, the T-57 is an autoloader. It is a good heavy tank. But you also have to worry about the fact that after you drop your 4 shells, you have 25 seconds where you are completely vulnerable and at the mercy of everything around you at that time. Its turret armor is kind of soft, but it has that nice conic design right about there, so anything from the front is most likely to bounce off anyways. But you have this little fat neck which kind of cradles the turret. When you look up, you can see it really easily, and from what I can tell, that is very penetratable through the whole entire autoloader family for the American. Now, the T110E5 is a very solid tank. It's got a good gun. It's not the fastest gun, but from what you can see, it has good penetration, it has amazing damage, it's accurate, and its aiming time is pretty decent. It has good hull armor, good turret armor, and again, with the conic design around the turret, it is nearly impossible to penetrate unless you're firing a very large round, and it's probably going to be gold. It does have a vulnerable lower Iglesias, like a lot of tanks do, but the unique thing about this tank is the fact that the commander's hatch, which usually is what people want to aim for when that's such a big target, is a very heavily armored commander's hatch, and you will still have trouble getting through to the commander's hatch. So keep that in mind if you're picking an American heavy tank. The British heavies, it's a heavy tank. I mean, armor's not spectacular considering that it's got a rear-facing turret and it's not a very large turret. Most people are going to see your hull and they're going to shoot your hull, and your hull is the weak part of your armor. Now, fortunately, you do have a gun that is very similar to the T110E5. It has good penetration, good damage, it aims faster, and it also shoots quite a bit faster, a couple seconds faster. But again, unfortunately, you have a very large hull, and on the good side, you have a very nice curve on your turret. It has very nice angles on the side and everything. But one thing that this tank does have, which is a good advantage, being that it has a rear-facing turret, is you can stick this tank on the side of a building, have the front part of your whole entire tank behind the building, and just stick your turret out. And because your turret has good armor, the only thing they're really going to see is your turret. Now, they will have a shot at your engine, which is unfortunate, but your tank is a much smaller target when only part of it is sticking out compared to the whole thing. Now, the German heavies, you have two choices, being the Maus and the E100. Now, most people see the Maus and they know this is a big, heavy tank. It has the largest hit hole in the game. It has a very big hole, very nicely sloped, just like the E100. They're almost identical in every way, except that the Maus does have less theoretical armor than the E100, but if you look at the turret shape on the Maus, it is a much better angle than the E100. If you hit the E100 from the front in its turret, and you have good penetration, you will probably get through because it is mostly flat. It's an easy target to penetrate if you can only hit that part of the turret, whereas on the Maus, if you have to shoot the turret, you don't really want to shoot at the turret, where it has curves on the side as well as nice little concave armor. But the Maus does not really have a lower Iglesias. It has this tiny little spot right here, which a lot of people will try and aim for, but you realize very quickly that is a very small target from far away. Unless you're right in front of its face, it's a hard thing to hit. The E100, unfortunately, has a very large under Iglesias plate, and just like most German tanks, if you're facing the enemy tank and you shoot it in the lower right side, which is the left side of their tank, it will probably catch on fire, because that is where the transmission on a lot of German tanks are located. Now, the gun on the Maus is a good gun. It's not the fastest gun, but it does more damage than most heavies do, and it has pretty good penetration. Fires standard AP, APCR shells, and heat shells, so the rate of fire kind of lets you down, but you make up for that in the fact that you are a big target and has a very large psychological effect on your enemy. E100 comes with the same gun that the Maus does, stock, but fortunately you can upgrade to this, which is a very, very nice gun. It is slower. It is noticeably slower. It is not that much less accurate. Same aiming time. Not going to make that big of a difference on your tank speed-wise because they weigh almost the same, and you're a big tank anyways. It's not a big deal, but your penetration, you do suffer a little bit, but most people fire heat shells out of this gun anyways, so you're averaging 334 penetration versus 311 for the APCR on the other gun, and you're almost doubling your damage from 500 to almost 800 damage with with the gun, and it is a good solid tank when you put that gun on there. Moving over to the French heavies, I don't know much about these. Not a whole lot of people play the AMX-50. It is a very big tank. It has got a large turret. It's got the same little cradle that the American tanks have. Unfortunately, due to most French designs, its armor is pretty sad, to be honest. It has a nice curve on the turret. If someone is aiming right by your gun, maybe you'll get lucky and it'll bounce off of it. But other than that, you're looking at a pretty good gun. You got 4 shells, 2.5 second reload, 30-second reload. That's what's really going to get you, is the fact that it takes a half minute to reload this gun. It's got above average penetration for a heavy tank at a tier 10, and it's got standard damage. So even though it's not the best gun, the fact that it has 4 shells, you can dump 4 shells and back up and let someone else come in and start doing damage, it really can make a difference really quick, because you can almost clip somebody with 1600 damage. Moving over to the Russian heavies, you also have 2 choices, being the IS-7 and the IS-4, which are almost identical in every way. They look a little bit different. IS-4 looks a little bit more stout, it's smaller. Now, the IS-7 does have more armor in the front, and it has that typical IS curve where it kind of has a line down the middle, and by the headlights it kind of shoots off to the side right there, and that is a very hard plate to penetrate, whereas the IS-4 is kind of a standard box plate. Now, the IS-4 and the IS-7, there's not really much of a difference between them. They're almost identically the same tank. Their turrets are both good turrets. I believe they both get the same gun. Now, IS-7 gets a 130, and the IS-4, it looks, has 2 choices of guns, which, judging from this, you would definitely want the tier 10 gun, because that tier 8 gun looks terrible. And the IS-7's gun being on the left, it has less penetration, more damage, but it's slower than the IS-4, so the IS-4 has a faster gun. Now, with gold rounds, which is probably what you're going to be firing in Clan Wars anyways, have a higher penetration on the IS-4 than they do with the IS-3, which you would probably expect, because the IS-4's gun is a little bit better, in my opinion. It doesn't do as much damage, but it is more accurate, and its aiming time is almost a whole second faster, which makes a big difference. Now, the Chinese have one heavy tank, the 113, which is a very rare tank to see. Going with that, its whole armor is not very good at all. That's probably why you don't see it very much, and its slope is pretty basic. I mean, but the turret is a very nice sloped turret. That is, there's not even a point in bother shooting at that turret unless you're hitting it from the side or the back, and it's got good armor at 240 from the front. Its gun, for a tier 10, is about average in every aspect. It's a little bit faster than some of the other ones. Its aiming time and accuracy are pretty good, but I probably would never recommend going for a 113. The Japanese, however, their tier 10 is only a medium tank, which is a good medium tank, but I'll get to that some other time. So if you're looking for a Clan Wars tier 10, and you like American tanks, you like big armor on your tanks, and you like a big turret, you want to go for the E5. And you probably want to go for the IS-4 and the E100. If you like having your speed on your side, then you'd want the T-57, you'd want the AMX-50B for the French, and then both of the Russian tanks for the heavies are relatively fast anyway, so it's not that much of a difference speed-wise. Now, if you're looking for armor, you want to pick one of the two German ones, which most people usually go for the German or the Russian heavies for clan wars anyways, in case you haven't noticed. They are very solid, good tanks. They're good duking it out tanks. If you want to go for something to just drop lead on somebody, you don't want to be a spectacular in any one way, speed-wise, damage-wise, or anything like that, then you should probably go for one of the Russians. That being said, a lot of people play these Russian tanks, so if you don't want to be that guy that everyone else sees all the time, you get into a tier 10 match, you see a lot of 7s and 4s and E100s, then maybe you want to go for something different, such as the T57 and the E5, which are still standardly common tanks, but they're less seen. And again, I would never recommend going for the 113 unless you just want to be exotic. Maybe you like rice, I'm not sure. Go for the 113 if you want to. But I mean, other than that, me personally, I can't play heavy tanks. I don't like heavy tanks. I have the Lao. I see it as a good heavy tank. It is a solid tank for the Germans. So if you're looking at getting tier 8 premium tank, the Low is a good tank. However you want to say it, Low, Lao, Lu, there's several ways of saying it. T-34 is a good tank. And the Russians have the IS-6, which is a good tank. So if you're just looking for a credit maker, those are three very good credit makers. And the IS-6 is highly regarded as the invincible noob tank of the game, where its armor either bounces everything or it bounces nothing. Even though its armor really doesn't look all that good, its slope in a tier 8 game is ridiculous. It is really hard to penetrate it from the front. But other than that, I'm done talking about heavies, and if you want to watch another video, I'll talk about medium.